Dear chess friends, Magnus Carlsen, one of the greatest players of all times, has played so many beautiful games in his chess career. When it comes to positional understanding, his games are really great. His endgame skills are always in GOAT level. His opening preparations are brilliant. His opening theory is really great, as I said. So many times you can download really Magnus Carlsen's chess game, and I think you can have a great preparation, in particular openings, in particular sidelines of openings. But many times I also ask myself the question, which game is the Magnus Carlsen Immortal? Which game is really sort of a Mikhail Tal Magnus Carlsen game? So I think one of the games that has to be a candidate to be really the Magnus Carlsen Immortal is the beautiful gameplay by Anish Giri and Magnus Carlsen from the Meltwater Champion Chess Tour Finals in 2021, in which Magnus Carlsen sacrificed his queen in move 9, which is really incredible. And the game lasted for more than 40 moves afterwards. So basically, when it comes to queen sacrifice, I think there are two types of queen sacrifice. There is this tactical queen sacrifice, in which you sacrifice the queen and maybe you have a winning sequence in 4 or 5 moves, or maybe you deliver checkmate in 4 or 5 moves, or maybe in 10 moves. It doesn't matter, but it's a tactical queen sacrifice. But here in this game, it's sort of a strategic queen sacrifice, in which Magnus Carlsen is hoping to get some active plays with his minor pieces by sacrificing the queen. So as I said, in move 9, Magnus sacrifices the queen, and the game was prolonged for more than 40 moves, which is really incredible. Magnus Carlsen played more than 40 moves without his queen, so be prepared. In my opinion, this is simply really brutal chess, really one of the greatest games played by Magnus Carlsen. So it was a fast time format, so it was a rapid game in the World Meltwater Champion Chess Tour, but still I think it's worth to study because it has so many beautiful tactical elements. So here Anish opened with the move e4. We have now the move c5 by Magnus the Sicilian, knight to f3, and after knight to c6 we have now the Rossolimo Nyezhmetdinov attack here by Anish. The idea is clear in White's position. White wants to play bishop takes c6, wants to create some kind of a messed up pawn structure with b takes c6 or d takes c6. The pawn structure would be doubled, and basically black has many choices. Black can play g6, e6, d6, even a6 I think is a possibility. Every of this move is perfectly fine for black. In the continuation, Magnus played the move e6. Now after move kingside casting, knight to e7 was played by Magnus. Now bishop to c6 is not working anymore because we'll simply recapture with the other knight. You gave up the bishop here, you didn't gain your idea, you didn't mess up the pawn structure, so that's why now this common idea of the Nyezhmetdinov-Rossolimo attack is not working. So here Anish opens the battle immediately with the move d4. We have c takes d4, knight to d4, and now very interesting choice by Magnus, queen to b6, attacking now the knight twice. And here I think White can undermine the pressure by playing the common knight takes c6. In my opinion, it will be a solid game now for both sides. After d takes c6, the game is I think perfectly fine for both sides. But what Anish did here, played the most aggressive way with this idea bishop to e3. It's a dangerous idea because look at this, the knight on d4 is protecting also the bishop on b5, so you have to now know really some wild tactical sequences if you play this line with bishop to e3. Magnus accepts the challenge, plays now knight takes d4, and here the main line is actually even to leave the position a little bit like this, play the move a4, supporting your bishop on b5. And basically, in order to stay in the game, White can be challenged with two ideas of black. Black can play now the move e5, or can play now the move knight to c6, regrouping simply around the square d4, because the knight is now attacked twice by the bishop and also by the queen. You see, with the move a4, White is staying now with this active bishop on b5, so at least the bishop is not hanging. So let's see possible continuation. In my opinion, e5 is the main line here, because after move c3 that White can play, it's really wild line. After a6, c takes d4 happens, then we have this one, knight to c3. So it's just a wild line that I really would not love to mention here, because I think you don't want to watch what happens if that happens. So it's a double-edged line. You can be the judge of this position if you want to go into this wild line, sacrificing one pawn. For instance, after e takes d4, bishop to d4, now you have to step back, and now look at this. With a5, bishop to b6 is coming, so it's really hard also for black to play the game, although black has an extra piece on the board. So as I said, this is one of the methods to go. But after move a4 that Anish Giri played, here Magnus Carlsen plays the immortal move knight takes b5 and sacrifices the queen. This is of course not the optimal move, I would not recommend it for you to play, but if you want to play really sharp tactical battle, you can play it, of course. Here, after knight to b5, Magnus is sensing some blood, because after bishop to b6 and 8x b6, he's noticing that now, of course, white cannot recapture the knight because of the tensions on the a file. So now, here, black is continuing the game with 3 minor pieces against the queen, which is, in many occasions, a good choice, but I think still in this line it's not so good because of many structural weaknesses that you have already here. We have the weak pawn on b6, and look at this, c5, e5, d6, c7 is weak. The king is still in the center, which also has to be noticed here. So there are many other elements that bother me here in black's game, although usually with 3 minor pieces you can really battle against the queen. So as I said, it's still a risky choice. The engine doesn't like here, for instance, Magnus Carlsen continuation, but of course for the beauty of the game, I really loved here Magnus Carlsen's choice. He sacrificed now the queen, and now Anish already makes a huge mistake with the move knight to d2. And this is not good, because you have to battle immediately for the d6 square. You're not allowing here sort of a fixed structure around the square d6, and this was now Anish's problem, because what he should have played is queen to d3, not allowing knight to d6. If knight to d6 happens, then black can defend this position. Now, for instance, knight to c7 has to be played, and now white comes into the game with knight to a3, knight to c4, and knight to d6. This was the way to go, and white should be much better here. Still, of course, black has some chances. I'm not saying black is losing this game because of these lines, but it's a really struggle now for black to defend this position. But what Anish did, he played now the move knight to d2, allowed now the move knight to d6. Notice that the queen is not attacking d6. Now Anish goes the e5 controlling d6, but now the knight can be rerouted here to f5. Now after move knight to e4 controlling d6, Magnus plays now this important knight to c6, and look at this, both of these pieces, the knight on f5 and also the bishop on f8, are controlling now the d6 square, which is a huge different story. Now, of course, here Magnus got challenged, of course, with the move g4. Here Anish desperately now wants to occupy the d6 square, but it's really a different story. If Anish would have played this move queen to d3 instead of this move knight to d2, it would be really a different position. So here knight to h4, Magnus is going now to g6, is trying also to attack the pawn on e5. We have now the move f4, and now very important move here by Magnus, h5, stopping simply here the pawn breakthrough, because here we have really a pawn storm that's coming. And for instance, if you play g takes f5, then black cements the position around the square f5. This doesn't matter, these are both weak pawns, but at least we're controlling again the weak d6 square. This is the square that we want to control. So here after move h5, that's why Anish kept here his pawn storm by supporting the g4 pawn with this move h3. So he's keeping his progress here on the king side. So in the continuation, Magnus plays now h takes g4. We have h takes g4, and now Magnus had now a brilliant idea to simplify the game, which he unfortunately missed. g5 would be even a much better continuation here for black, actually, because look at this, after knight to g5 that you maybe have to play, bishop to c5 is coming into the game, and it's quite an unpleasant game now for white. White has to even play some wild ideas of rook to f2 in order to stay in the game, which is really brutal. Now we play even knight to g6. Look at this, knight to f4 is coming. If you play f5, knight to e5, so suddenly black's pieces are dancing all over the board. Look at this, we have also beautiful rook activity. So I would not love to play anymore this game from white's perspective, for sure. But after move h takes g4 that Anish played, here Magnus plays now maybe even his first inaccuracy after this queen sacrifice, of course, the move d5, and this gives now here Anish Giri the opportunity to take en passant. Here in the continuation, now Magnus had the idea to play rook to a5, rook to d5. He's trying now to recapture the pawn in a different way. So still you see it's a battle for the d6 square, which I think Anish Giri could have won much easier before. Now he's still battling for the d6 square. So here Anish plays now the move c4. Very important move, not allowing rook to d5. And after move f5 that Magnus Carlsen played, we have now b4. And this is a brilliant move by Anish. This is really beautiful what he did here. He basically challenged now Magnus Carlsen on both sides, on the king side, but also now on the queen side, and that's the way to go when you're trying, of course, to open the game, because white has still the queen on the board, the king is still in the center. If the pieces are getting activated, here black is getting destroyed. But after move b4 and knight takes b4, notice a very important thing, that the bishop is not connected anymore to the knight. And now here Anish had a beautiful choice, maybe here to play g takes f5. Look at this, after knight to f5. Now I think a beautiful continuation would have been simply the move rook to b1. Rook to b1 is a must idea here for black, for white, in order to get the rook on b6. And why black needs now to retreat maybe to a6, but now we pick up this one, and still we have a great grip around the square. d6, maybe in the next couple of moves maybe we can play c5, but I think this was the way to go, attacking simply the knight on the b file. But after move knight to b4, as we said, Anish should have played g takes f5, knight to f5, and then rook to b1. He played a strange move, d7. d7 is connecting again the bishop to the knight, and again it's a different story now. Not a good move here by Anish. We have to say, getting also the bishop out is now, as I said, simply much better here for black. After bishop to d7, Anish had now this idea. He wanted to create, of course, first the check, but here Magnus Carlsen picks up now this annoying knight. After queen to d6, we have now knight to c6. Magnus is not allowing this pawn on b6 to be taken, and now comes a new mistake here by Anish Giri, rook to d1. Rook to d1 gives here, I think, Magnus Carlsen good chances. This was really not good what Anish Giri did. A better idea is to sneak in with the queen on c7 and going for the b6 pawn. That was the only way to keep some kind of an active game. Now, for instance, black continues with the move g5, and now after rook from a to d1, it's a different story, because black can never play this defensive move bishop to c8. But now, after rook from a to d1 that here Anish played, Magnus has now the opportunity to play bishop to c8, connecting now the bishop to the pawn on b7. And also notice that the knight on c6 is controlling d8, the bishop on c8 is controlling the square d7. So it's simply now a different story. It's now not so good what, as I said, here Anish Giri did. He allowed again here Magnus Carlsen to escape, and from this point on, actually the game is becoming a one-way ticket in black's favor, which is really well. So here in the continuation, we have now the move g5 by Anish Giri. He's trying, of course, here to create some spaces on the king side. In the continuation, we have now knight to g6 by Magnus Carlsen, and after move rook to f7, Magnus Carlsen plays a beautiful defensive idea. He gets now the king on f7, and there's nothing basically that can attack here black's king. Black's king is protecting everything. The black's king is protecting the knight, protects also the pawn on e6. Look at this. All of the pieces of blacks are really glued together. They're really compact here. From this point on, I think white doesn't have so many great attacking chances. So after king to f7 that Magnus played, of course, here Anish played this queen to c7 check. But again, it's a different story. Look at this. Both of these knights are very compact in front of the king. No more good checks are possible. The bishop is protecting the pawn. The rook is protecting the bishop. The bishop is protecting this. Magnus has, of course, opportunities to take out the pawn on b6, but these pawns are also weak. The weak pawn on a4 and also the weak pawn on c4. Rook to d8. We have rook takes d8, queen to d8, rook takes a4, and now after move queen to c7, now comes really a stunning and brilliant move here by Magnus Carlsen. He played now the move e5. e5 gives here good chances for Magnus Carlsen, because now the pawns are rolling. In the continuation, after f takes e5, we have here bishop to e6, and look at this. The whole position now is falling apart. Magnus Carlsen built himself a house here, which cannot be attacked by this wolf, sort of. It's sort of this three pigs and a wolf story, where you have really compact house, and the wolf cannot get in your house because it's so strong. Really nice setup here by Magnus Carlsen. Anish has, of course, the queen, has the rook, but no attacking chances. These are heavy artillery pieces. They don't have support anymore. Here, of course, Anish took the pawn here on b7. Magnus grabs out this pawn. We have also queen to b6, but as I said, now the whole position is falling apart. Magnus grabs another pawn, and now his main goal is just to start to push this passer on the f-file. So we have here rook to e2, now rook to c6, attacking the queen. The queen steps back. Now knight to g6, again keeping the position compact with all of these pieces. King to h2, bishop to c4. Very nice idea here by Magnus Carlsen. He uses now the power of the simple threat, basically keeping now white occupied. White needs now to react in many occasions, so he's not allowing here Anish Giri to breathe. Very nice attacking moves here. Rook to b2, again simple threat, again occupied. We have rook to f3, rook to e4, again with some threats, at least deliver checkmate on f4, checks here on h4, g4, f4, attack against the queen. So again, the power of the simple threat. So rook to b7, bishop to e6, regrouping, everything keeping compact here. King to g1, new check. We have king to h2, rook to g5 after rook to b6. Again, the power of the simple threat. Bishop to d5, the queen has to step back. After a couple of checks, we have here again this same mover, but now finally Magnus starts to push this pawn, and basically the game is over. There's nothing that can stop the pawn. You have to sacrifice, I think, in one moment maybe the rook or the queen for this passer. We have queen to d4, again keeping the position glued together, compact. Very nice move. Rook to d6, Magnus starts to push the pawn further. We have rook to d7, rook to f5, getting the rook behind the pawn. Very important move, using the Starash rule, simply pushing the pawn further. We have queen to g4, bishop to e6. It's sort of an attack against the rook, but also this cover attack against the queen on g4. Here Anish steps back. We have now knight to e5, attacking the queen. We have now this beautiful f2. The king comes closer, but now after bishop to d5, first the check. We have king to f1, a new check, and after king to g2, f1, the promotion in this particular position. Anish Giri resigned. So, incredible game by Magnus Carlsen. Really stunning ideas that he played here. In my opinion, it's one of the most epic games played by Magnus Carlsen. As I said, there are so many great games, but this was sort of a Rashid, Nyezhmetdinov, Mikhail Tal, Magnus Carlsen game in which he sacrificed everything here just to get a beautiful activity. We have to say it, in the beginning it was a risky choice. Anish had some chances. Who knows what how the game would have ended, but still, in my opinion, really an interesting game worth to study. Really one of the immortals played by Magnus Carlsen. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting ideas of the Rossolimo Nyezhmetdinov attack for sure. If you want to see more about this openings, more games that we have analyzed in this opening lines, check out here my coverage of some other great games. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.